The NFL season hasn't even started yet, and the Las Vegas Raiders are already in mid-season form, taking L. So, back in March, during free agency, when the Raiders signed Jimmy Garoppolo, apparently the reason for why his introductory press conference was pushed back a little bit was because he didn't agree to terms with the Raiders on the contract because he failed his physical. And the reason why he failed his physical is because apparently the foot injury that he suffered late last season with the 49ers ended up not properly healing up right. And then he ends up going to the Raiders. He doesn't pass his physical. And then the Raiders have to add a stipulation to the contract that allows them to cut Jimmy Garoppolo without paying him any money at all until he passes his physical and plays in the regular season game. And also due to this, it also pushed back his signing bonus. He was supposed to get a signing bonus of $11.25 million. They ended up making that part of his base salary for this year. So if he is cleared to play and he does play in a regular season game for the Raiders this year, he will get that and plus his base salary. And this is really weird because everybody keeps trying to figure out what's going to be next for the Las Vegas Raiders at quarterback. And from what Josh McDaniels has said, they're not too worried about this. They do expect him to be able to suit up for the regular season when the time rolls around. But the waiver is what really intrigues me. Because when you take a deep dive into the waiver and what he signed, they pretty much say that, hey, whatever happens after this is on you, not on us. So if you end up having further injuries to this, or this ends up putting you in a situation where you may be disabled, that's on you. We hold no responsibility for this. And it's just really weird. As a matter of fact, I actually want to go show you guys this. So let's see. I actually want to show you guys this. We're not going to read it in full, but I think it's really interesting when you look at what the stipulations are for this waiver that Jimmy Garoppolo supposedly signed. It's like really weird. So, okay, so this is the waiver on the screen. See if I can zoom in a little bit. So you guys look at this. Is for number one, it says this waiver and release is entered into the 17th of March 2023. The undersigned Jimmy Garoppolo player, being a football player who desires to enter the National Football League player contract with the Las Vegas Raider, acknowledges that in the absence of this waiver, he would not pass the club's physical examination because of a pre-existing medial and middle, I don't know how you pronounce that word, and the fracture of the base of the second something in the player's left foot, and that the club would not enter into an NFL player contract with player. 2, the player has been informed that as a result of such condition, player would be at an increased risk of further injury, symptoms that will require surgery, permanent disability, loss of motion, and any problems related to this left foot, including but not limited to further injury, instability, swelling, pain, injury to surrounding muscles and soft tissue, surgical management, arthritis, the need for treatment, and disability. Player also understands that such condition has decreased his ability to play professional football, and that continuing to play professional football may result in deterioration, aggravation, or re-injury of the existing conditions, rendering player physically unable to perform the services that would be required of a player by NFL player contract. The player fully understands the possible consequence of playing professional football with the physical conditions set forth above. Nevertheless, player desires to continue to play professional football and hereby assumes all matters set forth in paragraph 2 above. Because this player desires to play professional football for the club in consideration of the club's willingness to accept player as a football player and his agent, representatives, and here and the signs hereby forever waive, release, and discharge the club. Club owners and partners, causes of action, including without limitation, any claims arising under paragraphs 5, 9, and 13. So it's just a bunch of other stuff. But basically, for Jimmy Garoppolo, right, him going forth playing with this injury, it doesn't really look good for him long term. You already know that Jimmy Garoppolo, aka Mr. Jimmy Fragile Luggage, Mr. Handle with Care Garoppolo, he has a really extensive past with injuries. He's been injured nearly every season that he started at the quarterback position for the San Francisco 49ers. And the Raiders just go ahead and say, you know what? We're going to move on from Derek Carr, and we're going to replace him with a quarterback that has an extensive injury history, that isn't able to prove that he can consistently be available for a full season. Not only that, but we're also going to agree to sign you knowing that you're coming off a foot injury that potentially could end up coming back to haunt you in the near future. Like, this makes no sense. And this isn't all on Jimmy Garoppolo, okay? When he ended up going down with that injury late in the season and Brock Purdy took over, the 49ers physicians or their team doctors came out and said that he should have been able to come back within 7 to 8 weeks, which would have been around the NFC Championship game or potentially the Super Bowl. But when the NFC Championship came around, there were reports coming out that Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo, the relationship had deteriorated and they weren't really on good footing with each other. And at that point, we kind of already knew that Jimmy Garoppolo was probably going to be out of San Fran, especially when you consider how the quarterback situation transpired in that NFC Championship game. And it's just really weird that the Las Vegas Raiders, knowing that Jimmy Garoppolo's foot injury wasn't properly healed and that he was going to need surgery right after he signed, they would still go ahead and go through with this. And people keep saying, well, they had no other options. Their back was against the wall. Who else was out there? You mean to tell me that you could have had the opportunity to trade for the number 1 overall pick with the Chicago Bears? You could have gotten Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, hell, even Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. And instead of going that route, you rather still go ahead and try to sign a guy who's dealing with a nagging injury. Like, in what world does that make any sense if you're the Las Vegas Raiders? And for all of the people out there who keep saying they had no other options, there are always better options when you're looking at a quarterback who's injury prone and is dealing with a foot injury that hasn't properly healed. Like, the Las Vegas Raiders continue to show us why they're one of the worst ran franchises, not only in the NFL, but in sports in general. And then you got everybody speculating what's going to happen if Jimmy Garoppolo can't play this year, which I believe that he probably is going to be ready to play. I think the worst case scenario is that the surgery doesn't go well, he's not recovering well, he's not able to perform, then they can cut him without paying him anything, and then potentially you can start Brian Hoyer or rookie QB out of Purdue, Aiden O'Connell. But people think that maybe Tom Brady can come out of retirement and play for the Raiders, even though he kind of is an owner of the Raiders. So for him to be able to play and be an owner, that would have to be approved by the other owners in the league. And I don't really know if everybody's going to be on board with that. It's kind of a abuse of power, in my opinion. And even then, even if Tom Brady is able to play, this dude didn't really look all that great with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the situation that he has with the Raiders, if he was to be able to play, wouldn't be any better. You have Josh McDaniels, which although Tom Brady knows his system, the team around him, the offensive line isn't the greatest. The wide receivers are pretty good, but he doesn't have a defense, and he's going to be in the division where he has to go against Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, and Sean Payton. Like, I don't see how Tom Brady being a contingency plan, if Jimmy Garoppolo isn't able to play, works out in the Raiders' favor. There are fans out there who are a little bit excited about the idea of Tom Brady maybe starting at quarterback for Las Vegas this year. But if we're just being honest, all that would do would further push the Raiders downwards in terms of them being able to compete. And at this point, you look at Jimmy Garoppolo and his future, I don't really think he's not going to be able to play. judging by reports and what Josh McDaniels has been saying so far about this situation, they kind of already knew this, so they're kind of taking a safe approach to this. They don't want to rush him back too soon and then he further gets injured or something even worse happens. He re-aggravates the injury, so they're taking their time with this. You would like to have him on the field right now during OTAs, but training camp is a couple of weeks away, which normally takes place late July, early August. So even if Jimmy Garoppolo isn't able to get on the field, at least he knows the offense. Now, the downside is that you would like him to be available right now so he can get the chemistry and timing down pat with his receivers. But for the Raiders, they should be able to have a plan in place for when Jimmy Garoppolo, if he does return to the field, there should be a way to get the timing and chemistry down. But this is just a really bad situation for the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, the season hasn't even started yet, and they're already taking L's. Like, why the hell would you sign an injury-prone quarterback anyway to replace Derek Carr? Yeah, we knew Derek Carr wasn't good last year. It just wasn't a good fit with him being in Josh McDaniels' offense. But you mean to tell me you were going to move on from Derek Carr and you didn't really have a good plan in place to replace him? Pretty much you signed Jimmy Garoppolo because you thought he was the best out there, and this guy wasn't even 100% when you signed him. This makes no sense, and this is the kind of bull crap that the Raiders organization has been doing for well over 2 decades. And even if Jimmy Garoppolo does play this year, I don't think he's really going to move the needle for the Raiders. I think at best they're probably a 6-7 win team. And most Raiders fans kind of have already given up on the season. They're already ready to tank for Caleb Williams. And for Jimmy Garoppolo, man, this just isn't a good look when it comes to both sides of this. Some people question during his time with the 49ers if he was even taking his rehabilitation serious, which kind of put them in the bind because you saw what happened at the NFC Championship game. They pretty much had no QB. They had to throw Josh Johnson out there, and then he got injured. He was supposed to be their emergency release QB, and then they had to put Brock Purdy back on the field with an injured elbow. He couldn't even throw the football. So for the Raiders, man, I really don't understand why they will follow through with this, knowing that Jimmy Garoppolo already has an extensive history of injuries. Plus, the dude is already coming to you not fully healthy, and then you want to add these addendums. So if he does play, he can get that $11.25 million added to his base salary for this year. Like, it was a little bit smart on their behalf going through and, you know, adding some adjustments to the contract. But overall, man, like, this was a dumb decision by the Las Vegas Raiders. Like, I really don't know why they would just decide to go through with this in the first place. You could have gotten some better options out there at QB. You could have traded for a rookie QB, although they wouldn't have had known the system. But I'm pretty sure we can agree that most of us would be way more high on the Raiders if they had Bryce Young or CJ Stroud playing underneath center this year as opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo. This made no sense for the Las Vegas Raiders. And now, if you're a Raiders fan, you're kind of crossing your fingers that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be ready to come week 1, like how a lot of people in the Raiders organization keep saying. But at this point, who can you really trust? Like, can you really trust anybody in this organization right now? Like, you thought that Jimmy Garoppolo was legitimately going to be your starting QB this year. He comes in, he's not fully healthy. He has to get surgery a couple of days after he signs, and we don't even know if this dude is still going to be the same player after that surgery. This is just a bad situation for the Raiders on all sides of the spectrum, and the season hasn't even started yet, and the Raiders are already in mid-season form taking L's. They can't draft in the first round. They can't make good free agency signings. They can't build a championship caliber football team. They can't find a good head coach. It's just a complete mess right now up there in Vegas. But you know what they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And for the Las Vegas Raiders come January, around playoff time, they're going to be staying at home in Vegas, watching the playoffs from their couch.